Hello and welcome to the Transformation Project, a podcast and community for women who are looking to transform into the best version of themselves no matter where they are at. A place where you can listen, learn, and laugh along with us as we dive deep into different topics to help you live a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled life. Remember, we are all learning here together, and therefore the content and opinions of the hosts and our guests should not be taken as medical advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Transformation Project podcast. I'm Yvette Peterson.
Hello. Oh, and I'm Karen Adams.
And that's Karen. And we're one teammate short today, which for any of you that's been following us for any amount of time will know. That means that our beautiful Jessica has had her baby, which is very, very exciting. So we'd like to officially welcome to the world little Asher Chan, and he is gorgeous. And his birth was eventful, to say the least. We certainly did a podcast a little while ago, and we were talking about, birth plans and what to do when things don't go to plan. And I'm really glad we did that, because that's definitely something that we're going to cover, I think, in a future podcast, how Asher came into the world, and also all the different little things that as new mums we forget, or some new mums don't know, all the different things that happen just in those few weeks after birth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those things that we go through at the time, and then baby number 2 or 3 or 4 comes along. We're like, oh yeah, there's that bit.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, Jess has been so good about sharing her stuff on her Instagram as well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting her back online with us, and we can have a bit of a chat and share some of what she's learning and what she's relearning about being a mum.
Yeah, absolutely. So we thought today what we might do is give you guys a little bit more of an insight into us, I guess. And so we're going to start with Kazi, because I truly believe, and this has happened more than once, that every single person, no matter who you are and no matter the life you've lived, has something that can inspire others and others can learn from, and that can help people through difficult times. I truly believe that every single person has that story, whether you believe you do or you don't. And so both Kazi and I have some interesting backstories, I guess, that we've certainly learned and grown from. And so we thought today would be an opportune time just for us to share a little bit more about Karen today, and a little bit more about Karen's story, so that you can just start learning a little bit more about us personally. So today I get to interview Karen. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you so much, Yvette, for that awesome introduction. Yeah, I feel like it's not so much about learning about us, but I guess sharing some of our story and how we've overcome some of the little curveballs that have come our way. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you and I have both been to Tony Robbins events, right? And they ask somebody in the audience to stand up and share their story. And it's not even about the sharing of their story. It's about the way that we connect through the sharing of stories that I think is really important. So some of the things that I've been through and some of the things that you've been through are definitely things that a lot of women out there will be able to connect with. And if the way that we've moved through that journey can help to support or inspire, at least let them feel like they're not alone and they're the only one going through this, then I feel like that's a bit of a positive.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I don't know, I mean, I really have this belief that everything that happens, no matter how bad, there is something positive in some way that can be taken from that. And I feel like I've learned that through my challenge, and I feel like you are very similar in the way, just from things that's happened since I've known you, that you always find a way to learn and grow from that. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you more about some of those things today, and to hopefully be able to help other people out there. So where would you like to start? Because this is your story.
Okay, so I guess just stepping back into what you just said about learning how to reframe the story to find the positive. there's been some stuff that's happening, and I'll touch on it in a minute, in Brisbane just this week, that have kind of brought back some memories for me in relation to some of the challenges that I face. So, I've been through a lot, but just stepping into the story, I guess the biggest life-changing event that I had was at 22 years old, 8 days overdue to have my second child. My fiance was in a single motor vehicle accident and was killed. So I'm 22, so I'm still really young and still really formative and kind of learning about life. Like it's one of the interesting things at the moment. I've got a 24 and a 22-year-old child, and I look at them and I think there is no way that they are like adult enough. And I know they're capable, right? But when you project back and you kind of think, wow, I was 22 and the lives that we lead are quite different. To go through that, I thought I was old enough and big enough, and I was definitely an adult and able to deal with the stuff. And then that whole curveball, like baby number 2, of course. So Ethan, my oldest, was 22 months old at the time. I was 8 days overdue to have Savannah. So, for anyone out there who's ever been waiting for a baby to come and then to go overtime and still be waiting and waiting. And I still remember the days before it all happened. But, to then have this massive life-changing event occur, which was completely unexpected, obviously.
As always.
Was a massive change in my life direction. So I guess just to share a little bit of the story, some of the things. So I was engaged to be married. I had a little baby boy and about to have a little baby 2 now. He was 24, Jason, and a big, strong, kind of strapping kind of guy. Loved his rugby league. He loved to write poetry. He was very much like this indomitable force. Like he was bigger than life, really. And we didn't have very much. We kind of lived week to week. We would be the kind of couple at 22 and 24 who would be, living just to cover our costs. And we would be like, oh my gosh, how we treat ourselves this week. So we would go into the cars and find every 20-cent piece and put them all, oh, how much do we have? Okay, we can get takeaway tonight. Like we really lived by the seat of our pants, and about to have a second baby. And I remember at the time, interesting thing, reading the Bill Cosby book about when his kids were born. And one of the things that was stuck with me at that time at 22 was, how when they had their babies, they literally were so poor that the baby, they took for the baby to sleep in, they pulled out a drawer in the dresser and the baby would sleep in there. So to me, it was like, yeah, to me, I'm like, we don't need much as long as we've got each other and we're happy and, we have this baby, we'll just make do. And we had all these beautiful things like, baby clothes. And I was painting all these secondhand dresses that people had given us for the baby's room, like hand painting little teddy bears on all the drawers and, trying to make things as nice as they could be with as little money as we had.
And you're incredible about that, because that's a lesson you've brought with you. You're absolutely amazing at restoring furniture.
Yeah, well, I just love to redo things, like because I've come from this space of never having much. I've always learned to do what I have. Yeah, make do with what I have and try and make it as nice as it can be. So I remember painting all this furniture and it was on the dining room table and, in full nesting mode. Like Jess, with her pregnancy recently, she was talking about how she just never got into the nesting space. I was the full nester, mate. I was painting everything. I was cleaning everything. In fact, the day Jason died, he came in because he'd been working all day, came into the lounge and I was vacuuming the floors. I had cookies in the kitchen. They were ready to go into the oven. I'd cooked dinner for him because he had to run back out to go to work. And that was full nest, mate, 3 or 4 different things happening all at the same time. And I still remember he came in the door and he'd been to watch the NRL grand final, semi-final, because it was September. And he gave me a kiss on the cheek and was like, hey, babe, how you doing? I'm sorry, I'm running a little bit late. I should watch the game. It's such a great game. Oh, my God, blah, blah, blah. But I've got to go to work. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Your dinner's on the bench in the kitchen. And, I'll see you after work. And he's like, yeah, cool. I'll see you after work. I said, can you do me a favor and swing past the video shop, which there was videos back in those days, maybe DVDs, a long time ago, 1998, and grab a movie for us to watch after you get after work. And anyway, so he ran out the door and I just kept vacuuming and cleaning and put the cookies in the oven. And about 20 minutes, half an hour, time was like unknown at this stage. A car pulls up in my yard and I'm like, oh, that's weird. I don't know who that would be. And then his mum bustles in and she's like, Cass, come on, we have to go around our hospital. So I'm from Norfolk Island and we have our own language there, and we have to go to the hospital. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not having the baby yet. And she said, oh no, Jason's been in an accident, so we need to go to the hospital. And I'm like, what do you mean? He was just here and not he's been in it, we've got to go to the hospital. So I turned the oven off and piled in the car, and we're driving in the car around to the hospital. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, so irresponsible. I'm going to be giving birth any time now, and he's going to be in the bed next to me with his bloody leg up in traction, and he's not going to be any use to me. And anyway, we get to the hospital, and at Norfolk, it's only a very small hospital, so we go around to the back door, and the doctor opened the door, the back door of the hospital, and like met us at the door. And here's me, like 9+ months pregnant, and his mum, who is probably in her 60s at that stage. And he's like, and he goes, so who are you? And we're like, oh, we're the family of Jason. And he said, oh, well, he's been in a single motor vehicle accident. He sustained massive head injuries, and he probably isn't going to live. And we hadn't even walked into the door of the hospital room into the hospital at that stage. And the first thing was just this sense of no, disbelief, no.
Yeah, this can't be happening.
Yeah, no, we just saw him 20 minutes. He's fine. Somebody's just playing a really bad joke. Anyway, no, not a really bad joke. So we went in and they took us, and he was in the hospital on a stretcher and was going to be wheeled down to surgery. So there were 2 doctors at the island at the time, the one who was my doctor who was dealing with all of the pregnancy stuff, and the other doctor as well. And so my doctor came up, he's like, Karen, we're about to take Jason in for some surgery to reduce some of the bleeding, the pressure on his brain. Do you want to just come and see him? And so I walked down the end of the hallway and I could see it. It's clear as day. It's amazing how things kind of imprint in your mind. And he was lying on this hospital trolley, and he was still massive, big as life. His head was bandaged, but he was a bit yellow. And aside from that, he looked fine. Like there was no obvious stuff happening, but he was obviously unconscious. And I bent down and I kind of held his hand and I gave him a kiss, and I said, I don't know what happened, but if you're in there and you can hear me, like, I love you, and we're having a baby, so you've got to be okay. And then I said, if the baby's a boy, if this is the last time I can talk to you, if the baby's a boy, we'll call him this. If the baby's a girl, we'll call her this. And, hopefully this isn't the end, right? So then they wheeled him down to the surgery room, and we went back to the waiting room and had to start letting people know. So the other thing on Norfolk is, because it's a small community, on the community radio, every time there's a baby born, they play a song, a particular song for a girl and a particular song for a boy. And because there was like 40 babies due that year, everyone knew when everyone was due. We kind of anxiously await. It's like this real tight community. And there's also a song that you play on the radio when somebody dies, right? So, we kind of notified a few of our family and friends, so people started kind of filling in. And at this stage, Jace was still alive. And, they went into the surgery, and then the doctors came out a couple of hours later and took us down to a waiting room. And my doctor, and he said, look, we've tried to reduce the pressure and he's still unresponsive. He's not going to pull through, but we need to know is what did he want to do about organ donation? So then was the conversation with his mum and dad about, his mum was like, no one's taking anything out of my boy. He's going to die. We're going to bury him like this. And then the doctor said, oh, look, if we do look at organ donation, what will happen is an Air Force jet will come over and they will do a full assessment, and they won't take him unless there's absolutely no hope. And so his dad and I latched onto this little hope word. There's some hope, right? So somebody else who's bigger and better equipment will be able to do an assessment and we'll know. And so then we're like, yep, okay, we're going to do this. So the dad and I trumped his mum over the whole decision about what was going on. So the Air Force Medivac was coming over, and then with the Medivac, it wasn't just to do the assessment, it was to then take him back if there was going to be some kind of any organ thing. And so, of course, there was then the whole, what am I going to do? And so I was going to, because I decided at 22 that there was no way in my life ever again would anyone that I love be out of my sight, because something bad might happen. And so I was going to, Ethan, my 22-month-old baby was coming because I was 8 days overdue. I had to have a midwife come. My mum was coming as my support person. Like, it was just like this huge, big thing, like getting all these things organised, ready to go on a medevac flight to leave the island to come back to Australia. And then several hours later, the medevac flight got there and they again did the assessment. And then they said, no, his organs, by the time we get there, his organs won't be of any use for anybody. So we can take him. Look, we're here. We're here. We can take him away, but it's unlikely that any of his organs actually will be of use to anybody. And so then my mum said to me, look, Ethan, my eldest, was born in Adelaide. Jason really wanted to have a child born on Norfolk Island. If he's of no use to anybody over there, maybe it's best to just make the decision here. So then we had to turn off the life support. It was a pretty shitty time.
Yeah, wow.
Making the decision to turn off the life support, even given all of that information that we had, was so incredibly challenging. Because, just to share a little bit about what was going through me, like 12 months later, I still would have these hallucinations or hopes or thoughts that maybe we buried him and he was still alive and he would dig his way out, and I would be driving and he would come up the hill and be like, what the hell? So that little thing of hope that exists inside somebody can last, and it did for me, for such a long time after even knowing and seeing, and turning off the life support and seeing all that. Like, this is just incredible. So yeah, we turned off the life support, and it was a big week after that. I got induced, had a baby, had a funeral, had a christening. It's like one of those 4 weddings and a funeral movies, but that was my life.
It must have felt like a blur.
It is, but it's also so clear. Like, just even as I'm sharing the story with you, I can see it in my mind's eye. And my hands are shaking and I can feel it in my body. So the stored trauma from that 20, Savannah's what, 20, how old is she? Is 23 years later, is so incredible. And so I have this deep empathy for people who have that loss of somebody who lose somebody they love suddenly, because I have this understanding, I guess, of the journey of grief and going through that whole sudden rug torn out from underneath you. My whole life is planned and then suddenly it's gone, and then having to rebuild from there and not knowing where or how or if you're strong enough. And my kids were a double-edged sword, right? So I was 22. I then had 2 little babies and I was just beside myself and not knowing what my purpose was. And it's through reading books like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is an amazing author on grief. So I read quite a few of her books and things that kind of helped it to make a little bit of sense to me and gave me some hope and some possibility of something beyond that. And so for me, I created the story in my mind that, because I guess the biggest question is always why? Why him? Why did he die? Why wasn't it me? Why, why am I still here? Why have I gone through this? So all of those kind of questions. So I formed this understanding in my brain that there was something more that I needed to do in the world. Because at that stage I was, my belief, my purpose was to have kids and, be a good person but it wasn't anything beyond there. There was no greater purpose or passion beyond myself and that level of existence. So story in my mind, something more that I needed to do. There were people that I needed to help. And there was, through sharing my story, if I could help people to see that there was light beyond that, then that made it okay. So whilst we started right back at the beginning about, creating a bit of a silver lining and finding something positive out of the experience, and something like that for anyone who's going through it is incredible. Finding a purpose beyond that, or finding a way to use that terrible experience to help somebody else, to me, made it bearable, made it okay. So that's kind of how I've moved through every other challenge that's happened in that time since then. And here's the other thing, right? So when you have something shit like that happen in your life, you really have this thing, okay, karma, tick, that's my bad thing. So now there's only good things that are going to happen.
It's going to be cruisy sailing from now on.
Oh yeah, I had that belief for a little while, and then life went crazy again, and then I'm like, okay, so there's more, right? So it's been a real journey for me. I'm only 40. I'm 45, and I just find that the things that we're going through now, like from a whole world perspective, the COVID stuff and the conversations that are being had, like I think if you can start to look for the ways to reframe the story to make it a positive thing, then it takes away the power of that experience to bring you down.
Something that came up just for me, because I know, I guess just as a mom, and even for my mom, we're kind of like warriors, right? So if we, not warriors like, Mel Gibson, warriors like always concerned. And even though for my mom, like she has adult children, if she doesn't hear from us from a day, like she's freaking out. So in telling us that, you were talking about how you were then worried about if anybody was out of your sight, what was going to happen. Have you worked through that, or have you? And how does that go for you now with having adult children who are constantly in and out and going away?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the first major relationship I went into after that happened was not for a few years. So I met now my ex-husband, but in the first stages of the relationship, and it was probably a good at least 2 years of the relationship. Like if he said he was going to be somewhere at a certain time and he wasn't, massively triggered. So he would come home and I would be losing my mind. And it took a while for me to be able to clearly explain to him why. It took many, many, many years for me to be okay with the fact that I wasn't going to be in control of everything anymore. And, Savannah is an example. My daughter, she's 22, turning 23 this year. She's heading off to Korea for 6 months. And given the state of the world, mate, there are some amazing triggers going on. Yeah. But I think through time and distance, you learn that we can't be in control of everything, and at any given time, things can change for anyone. And you can focus on that, right? We can focus on the fact that life is not in our control, and we can be fearful of the things that aren't in our control and worry about them all of the time. But that then affects the quality of your existence today. So I think I sat in that space for a period of time. And I think that's a natural process of going through that grief and finding some meaning. And I think, a long answer to your question, but it's the story again, right? So that we have the power to change the story that we attach to things. So if I was to worry about Savannah going away and going to Korea, and I may not be able to see her, and I may not be able to get to her, and something might happen and this might go wrong, and you know what I mean? If I attach that to her going away, then every minute of every day I will be in hell. And there is a part of me, I would be lying if I didn't tell you that the truth, that has that still sitting deep in the back of my mind. There is the things that can go wrong. But instead, I'm changing my focus to all of the reasons why this is such an important thing for her to do for her own journey in life. And at the end of the day, my journey has been about kind of unpacking all of the things that have gone on in my life and trying to give them some sort of positive meaning. So I appreciate, whilst my kids don't always make the decisions that I would make.
I never do.
But yeah, I know, right? And again, as parents, like there are so many things that we can attach meaning to about how, it's devastating, terrible, but we can also appreciate that they're owning their own power as individuals and love them and be so proud of those decisions that they're making. And that in itself changes the story and the meaning behind the story and makes it an amazing thing. Like I'm so incredibly proud of Savannah, not letting this whole chaos in the world change her determination and resolve to do this. And yes, I have fear around it, but that my pride for her far outweighs that. And if the poo hits the fan, then we'll deal with it then, and we will do everything in our power to make it a positive thing. But this can be an incredible experience for her too. So yes, it took me a long time to get into this space. And when stuff goes wrong, then you just deal with it in the best way that you can. And you do the whole grief, the whole journey, the anger, all of that stuff. Like that's normal and that's real. But it's like, don't unpack and live there. It's okay to feel those things, but don't unpack and live in that space.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree. I think for me, with my kids, with some of the things that's happened through my life, I always come back to pretty much everything is figure outable as long as we all work through it together, that there's almost nothing that can completely take you out as long as you just sit in it for a minute, try and calmly work through it, and then just, I guess, keep moving forward. Like just as long as there's just one foot in front of the other, even if you're not looking up and you're not looking confident, you might be, just looking at your feet right at the top of the hill when you've been going for like miles, and it's just, you're looking at the ground and just one foot in front of the other, but you're still moving forward in some capacity is enough.
Yeah.
At times.
I think the other thing is comparisonitis too, right? So I've had friends who are going through some major stuff in their life, and then we'll have a conversation about it, and they'll be like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. In their mind, they're like, oh, I haven't gone through what you've gone through, so it's not as bad. But if that's the worst thing you've ever experienced, then that's the only thing what it feels like inside you. So honoring that as your journey too. It's not about how hard my life is compared to your life. It is about awareness that there are people who are living massive, incredible, devastating, tragic existences. Like that is real for some people. So also being grateful and appreciating what we have today too, right? So comparisonitis is about both of those sides, recognizing we can't compare our journey with others and say mine is worse than yours. So, take a teaspoon of concrete and harden up. Like that's not okay, because everyone's journey and the way we move through that is really normal. When Jace died, like I remember one of the things that happened, like we turned off the life support. We drove down to Kingston, and in my mind, I'm a very spiritual person. And even right back then, like I found this shell or stone on the beach, and I, held it in my hand, and I'm like, this is me releasing your soul back into the universe where you came from. And I threw it out to the water. And to me, even today, like that spot, that particular beach is quite sentimental because of that reason. But we drove back up to my mum's house. And at this stage, I don't remember where Ethan was. We were talking about blank spots. I have no idea where Ethan was. I went and hid in the spare bedroom with my baby inside me and under the covers, and was imagining I was climbing back up into my own uterus to hide from the world. And all I heard was the phone ring, 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 ring all day, because the death announcement song went on the radio. So every person on the island was reaching out to say, how can we help? How can we help? How can we help? How can we help? And I did not want to talk to anybody. Like I needed to retreat at that stage. And that's okay too, right? So if you're working with somebody with grief and they want to be social and they want to connect and touch and hold, that's okay. But if you're working with somebody who wants to escape and run away and retreat, that's okay too, as long as they're safe. Like safety is the important thing. And yet understanding, like I have a friend whose daughter committed suicide, and there were people a year later saying, come on, it's about time you got back into it. And it's like, no. Yeah, at the end of the day, everybody's journey is their own. And until you experience that, like I have experiences now as an adult, at 45, I have a level of understanding of what his parents went through now based on where my kids are. Like, life's journey teaches you these things. So back then it was all about, like, I was in incredible grief and thinking about myself and my children, and you know, in my mind, my relationship with him was way more important than theirs, because he had chosen us and I was the mother of the children, and la la la, but no idea about their experiences losing their child. Yeah. And now like when Ethan just turned 24, the same age as Jason, I just had this like massive aha moment. I'm like, wow, like if I was to lose him today, my world would fall down. Like, you know, I get it's that awareness through life and living of what other people are going through. And I think that's important. And that's definitely been part of my journey, is really trying to understand not just what I'm going through, but how other people are affected by things too.
Yeah, I can truly see that with you. And I see you working with people, how incredibly intuitive and compassionate you are with other people, which comes from having to be in that space in some degree and having an understanding of where they are and honoring where they are in that space. So how did you move forward from that point onwards? And then where did you go from there? How did you start moving forward from there?
Oh, I ran away. I ran away. I definitely did. So I lived on Norfolk for 12 months. And on the island at the time, there was no support services. There was no like counselors, grief counselors, nothing like that. There was an incredible community. Like, I would come home and somebody would be out mowing my lawn and there would be food on my table. And like 12 months later, people would just bring me these beautiful things. There was lots of support, but just that emotional support, understanding. And I really, like, one of the things that I noticed, his parents were in a lot of pain as well. And one of the messages that his mum would kind of share was, oh, you know, life is hell. And when we die, then we'll go to heaven and things will be better. And I had this real belief that I didn't want my kids to grow up feeling like they were hard done by because of that experience. Like, so I made the decision to run away. So when Savannah was a year old and Ethan was 3, I went to university. So I decided to study counselling, actually, and I was going through education to do counselling so I could help other people, because I just knew, like I said, my belief was, okay, if I can help other people, then this will be okay.
And we'll give it some meaning. Yeah.
So I went away to university in Wollongong, and my sister, who was incredible, she moved from South Australia and came and lived with me in Wollongong for the first 6 months to help me kind of get my feet and find, you know, how to navigate children in university. And I had a great time. Like, I was still young then, right? I was still really young. In my 20s, I still had 2 young kids, and I made some interesting life decisions there too, which probably a whole different story about some decisions that we make as young people. But I just, I struggled because I wanted my kids to have space, and so consequently I was living in a house with a yard and then trying to be on top of everything. And financially, I just wasn't keeping my head above water. Like, I was nearly homeless then a couple of times. So I learned to live on very little again. I really struggled. My grades at university were great and really good for my ego, because I did great. So academically, I'm like, okay, I'm not dumb. I know I can do this, and I wanted to do really well, but just financially I struggled. So I moved back to Norfolk again after a year, literally with the plan to go back for a year and save some money and then go back and finish my degree. And then obviously life had other intentions for me, because that's where I met my ex-husband. And so Savannah was 2.5 when we met, and Ethan was 4.5. So, you know, that whole next chapter of my life kind of came together based on that, being in a relationship, and then just finding my way through all of the other interesting things that happened. So, yeah, I think just being brave and stepping into things that were really terrifying, but also understanding that I didn't want my kids to grow up without having a strong male in their life that could support them as well, you know. And I appreciate that I couldn't be the only one. And it takes a village to raise a child. Like, I've always believed that. So, yeah, I went back and then was on Norfolk for many, many, many years until I, you know, came over to Australia again. So, I think we need to be in control of the stories that we tell ourselves about the things that go on in our lives. Because at the end of the day, we're not in control of the events, but we are in control of the meaning that we attach to the events. And, like I said, I've been nearly homeless a couple of times. We have a running joke in my house about poverty soup, because that's what we ate for, a long period of time, just because that's all we could afford to live on.
What is poverty soup?
So poverty soup started with this period in time where we just had no money. We literally had like $5 to buy food. And when I was a kid, I grew up watching the show called Aristos's Kitchen, and Aristos would go into people's home and he would just make food based on what's in the cupboard. So it was really, I don't even know why I loved it, but it's been very handy for me because I've learned to create food based on what's in the cupboard. So I had some carrots, and I had some stock, and I had, salt and pepper, and probably some cream or whatever. So, I got those things, and I made a carrot. It was essentially a carrot soup, which this was going to be horrible, but it actually tasted okay. So it became this constant thing. Poverty soup was just this, whatever we've got in the fridge with some stock and some cream and, a bit of salt and pepper and some herbs, has evolved over time as I've financially becoming more adept.
Yeah.
But poverty soup is foundationally the $5 soup that I made one time when we just had nothing. So yeah. Poverty soup, even Ed's kids will ask if we can have poverty soup now. They quite like it. They quite like it, but it's, we're far from poverty now compared to where we were, and that's based on the choices that we made. And so yes, it's interesting, right? We learn to live with, and you've had the same thing, like you've had the same experience of separation.
My poverty soup was pancakes though.
Yeah,
because it's like flour and water, and and I thought it, and it's interesting how children attach different things. So for your kids, it's like poverty soup, but it sounds like the way that you say it, there's some level of, I guess, good memories or affection attached to poverty soup. And so for me too, like pancake night was great night for me. And I think that comes from the fact that my mom made it special, even though it was probably, there was a lot going on. So for you, when that was happening mentally, there would have been a lot of stuff going on for you, but your kids did not necessarily feel that.
Yeah,
You're protecting them from that. And so for my mum, the same. I thought pancake night was like a treat night. I didn't understand the background.
Yeah.
The reasons.
Yeah, true. I've never thought about it that way, but it is. I think same thing with our kids, right? They learn through the way that we interpret the world as well. And one of the things that has been really important to me with my kids is trying to give them the best opportunity that I can with what I have at the time, and then having real conversations with them. So whilst you talk about protecting them, I protect them to a degree, but I also have conversations about the reality of life. So I have this really beautiful memory of Eli, who's my youngest. At one stage, we were, walking in Brisbane City a few years ago, so he was quite young, and there was a homeless guy sitting on a bench, and Eli was like, "Oh, what's that guy doing over there who's a bit smelly?" And I said, "Oh, I don't think he has anywhere to live." I said, "I think we should do something really kind for him." And he goes, "Oh, okay, can we go and buy him some food?" And I said, "Yeah, of course, we can go and buy him some food. What should we buy him?" So we went, he picked the restaurant, and we went and bought this food, and Eli went over and tapped him on the shoulder, and then gave him the food, and then ran away as fast as he could. But just teaching them around that, having conversations, because I know, one of the things that he fed back to me was there was other family members who would cross the street to walk around, homeless people, and they learn from us.
Yeah.
So having those conversations and not being frightened of that, not even putting down the other person that wants to cross around and go on the other side of the street. It's about having a conversation about, okay, well, maybe they don't feel comfortable with being in that space, and that's okay. But how do you feel, and what can we do, and how can we help him as well? So yeah, look, parenting is interesting, right? No one gives us a rule book and tells us how to do it. And I know that there are things that I've done as a parent that I'm really not proud of. Like with my older brain and with things that I know now, like I made some mistakes, like some considerable mistakes that I would do way better now. But I know we have to be kind to ourselves too. And I know that it's time, like you said, like there's so much going on. I spent a period of 2 years living under a house. So when my ex-husband and I separated, I had the 4 kids then, and we rented a house close to the older kids' school. And we literally had 3 bedrooms. So initially, the 2 older kids had their own bedrooms, and I shared a bedroom with the 2 boys. And then I thought, no, this isn't good, because whenever they'd come home, I'd be like, you need to clean this and you need to do this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they don't feel like they have a space. So that's really important to me, that they have a space. So I moved under the house, and it was concrete floors, unlined walls. The floor joists were above my bed. Like, I'm allergic to dust. It was not a great space for that. But I tried to keep it as clean and as nice as it could. And I would write all of these mantras like, smile, it's a beautiful day, also stuff on the bottom of the floor with chalk. So when I'd lie in bed under this freezing cold house, thank God we live in Brisbane, not Melbourne, but lie in my bed and look at those things and just be like, smile, it's a beautiful day, it's okay, you know, life is good. And just to remind myself that it was going to get better. Life is okay. This is just another tough spot in the road. I had a possum. I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and a possum would come and sit in the beam under the floor joists above my bed, which was terrifying. I'm like, I'm going to wake up and this possum is going to be like on
your
head
face
or something. It was 2 years. So I would literally build these little things into the walls to try and stop the possum coming in. I remember one night, because we used to live in Papua New Guinea, I'd get up with the spears that my dad had, and I could hear the possum coming up the wall. So I'm just like, I'm not violent, but I was like poke to try and get it out and scare it out of the room. Oh my gosh, it was such a memorable time. But none of the kids would move down there. When they got older, I'm like, do you guys want to swap? And we could I could go upstairs. And oh no, Ethan used to call it the rape dungeon.
Oh my God.
You can stay in the rape dungeon, Mum, you're fine. I'm like,
Thanks, Ethan.
Oh, no. So anyway, look, it's been a journey, and I'm so grateful. Like, you know, where I live now, I have a beautiful home. I have, you know, lovely family. I have lots of space and too many things, but it's because, and I believe it's because I have this belief around my life and where I'm going to go, and I'm going to use the stories and the things that I've been through to help other people, and that's how I get meaning, and that's how I fulfill my purpose and passion. So
yeah, I think I can remember when I first met you, one of our first conversations, you were talking about your dungeon and the mantras, and just the fact that you were in that space, in that situation, and you still had your mantras on the ceiling really made an impact on me when you said it. And I think, again, it just comes back to that learning and growing and understanding that you have a greater purpose, and that no matter what happens around you, as long as you can stay true to that and keep that as kind of like, you know, your north, no matter what's going on, you're able to still put that one foot in front of the other and keep going forward too. And I think for both of us, that empathy for people who sometimes other people may avoid comes from a realization of how quickly life can change. I mean, you know, in one instant, your life can change from one thing to another, where you have no control over that. And so for me, whenever I see people who are in difficult situations, it's almost like they're, by the grace of God, go I. Like, if one thing had changed, if something had been different, you never know what that one thing was for them. And I think on the one side, you can, you know, as we were saying earlier, you can be fearful about that, but you can also just put so much energy into trying to create the best of every moment that you have, no matter what, which flips the switch sometimes on the situation that you're in. You know, if when you're in that is like, okay, somewhere in this, there's a positive. Where can I find it? Because we always know in the situation you're in, if you're looking for a negative, you can find it for sure. There's lots of them. It's easy. Sometimes it's a little harder to find the positive, but I often find for myself, if I'm in a headspace where I'm really struggling, I have to really consciously go, somewhere in this, there's a positive. What is it? I need to find it. And I start focusing on trying to find almost my way out of that space.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question in relation to that. So one of the challenges that I've had over time, which I'm starting to reconcile, I think the older I get, is when you see somebody and their life's just crazy, chaotic, and you just want to love and support and help them. And yet their actions and behaviors don't love and support and help themselves. So there becomes a period of time, and it took me a long time with a lot of people to be able to go, okay, this is not my journey, because you can give and give and give and give and give and give and give. But until that person is ready to change the story, flip the switch, make the choice and changes themselves, there's nothing that, here's the thing, right? Well, there's nothing that I can do to help you if you're not prepared to help yourself. Do you find 100%. That's the case?
100%. And I think the realization for that, for me, actually came from Kiara Lee, our eldest, who struggled with depression for a time. And we had another friend whose daughter was also struggling with depression. And I said to Kiara, what shall I tell her? What do I tell this mom? What shall she do? And she said, tell her that there's nothing that she can do unless her child wants to help themselves. And I was like, oh, I'll tell her. She wants some actions,
Yeah.
But for Kiara, it was like, if that child does not want help, there is nothing you can do. You can only love them. You can only be there, and you can only love them. And I think I've had to translate that, because through what we do in our work, in our online work that we do with people, and in our face-to-face work, in different ways, you and I guess our purpose in life is to help other people. And in order to help other people, you are often in contact with people who require help. And so we get hit with some heavy stories, every day, because we're looking for people we can help. That's our purpose.
Mm.
And so sometimes those are stories around finances or emotional things or physical things. That's why we originally wanted to share these conversations with those people and reach more people. And it has been hard, that there's some people who we can help. You can even give people the knowledge, but unless they take that on and they change their own mindset and they change their own focus, it's very hard to help them. And I still struggle with relinquishing the responsibility of that onto them and not feeling responsible myself, because we can't.
Yeah.
Every person has to walk in their own shoes.
Yeah, the more and more we do it, the more and more we need to learn to do it, but also to protect ourselves too. It's such a journey, isn't it? I love it. I love it. It's such a journey, because even if you think you have all the answers, something will happen. You're like, oh, I do not have all the answers.
Yeah.
And that's what I actually really love about our podcast too, is having the opportunity to talk to more people, to open up different mindsets or beliefs, or to create some structure around different things that then go, yeah, okay, that really works, or that makes a difference. And at the end of the day, whoever is listening is going to either connect with our story because they're going through something similar, or they may know somebody else who might connect with it, or we have a speaker on that then connects with them based on something different. So look, there's so many things going on for so many people at the moment. At the end of the day, I think knowing that we're not alone, knowing that we have an element of control over what's going on in our world, and learning how to relinquish control over that we don't have control over, seems to be the main things.
I agree.
And that's for us too, right?
Yes, we need to take our own advice.
Yeah.
Some days that's easier than other days. Kazi, thank you so much and coming on and sharing that little part. I know both you and my stories are very long and convoluted, and that's just a little part of it. There's a lot of other stuff that I really want to dive into with you that I think would be super helpful for people, that we're definitely going to do in other podcasts. But I think that today's podcasts are going to be helpful for so many people out there for so many different reasons. I really appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty around sharing something that's really quite close and personal for you. So thank you, my friend.
No, thank you for, I guess, being open to asking the question. And then it's nice to be able to share. And if we can help, one person, then that's an amazing positive.
Yeah, 100%. And to you out there who's listening, thank you so much for joining us today. Please, if you like what you hear, if you connect with what you hear, please share it with somebody else. Go and listen to us and subscribe and give us an honest review. And please share with us if there's anything in particular that you would like us to cover or a particular guest you'd like us to try and get on to interview, because we're really here to serve you. So we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on our website, which is allthews.thetransformationproject.net.au, or you can email us at support@thetransformationproject.net.au. Thank you so much for listening to us today, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.